So it's really, really great to be here, thanks to Susan and her amazing team. Amazing Susan and her amazing team. And, as Laura said, shared use is here, and we've heard some of the big trends in the first panel. And I guess I think of this panel, which is suddenly materialized, as living examples where the rubber hits the road in the US and elsewhere, and particularly France and Mexico in this case. And we have an amazing panel. We've got Dan Emerine, who's transportation planner for the DC Office of Planning. We've got Iván de la Lanza, the director of bicycle mobility strategy for Mexico City. We've got Ed Reiskin, director of transportation for the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency, and Gilles Vesco, who's vice mayor of the city of Lyon in France. And I think maybe having seen the photos earlier, the reason why I may have been invited to moderate this panel is because I started out in the trenches in this space at the City of Toronto in the olden days. In other words, the photos were sepia. And so it's a little longer than I'd like to admit. So I hope I can, at the very least, bring a little antique historic value. And I think Susan and I met in it's frightening, but the mid-90s. But also because for the past 7 years, I've had a great good luck to direct and develop and direct SMART at the University of Michigan and work with and learn from cities around the world to advance the wider new mobility industry, of which, of course, shared use is a pivotal and groundbreaking and catalytic and major part. So I guess I'm hoping that we can bring a little industry-wide context as well. And just before we get to the panel, I wanted to do a shameless plug for one of the things that might relate here. In 2012, we were lucky to be able to create, thanks to the Rockefeller Foundation, something called the Moby Prize, which is a prize for new mobility, enterprise, and entrepreneurship. And I think there are many, many people in the room who may want to apply for that and become part of the platform of new mobility enterprises and entrepreneurs worldwide that allows us to continue this networking and expand it. Okay, so now time for our panel. Here's how it's going to work. Each panelist will get 10 minutes to talk about between 1 and 3 of their big ideas or their insights around this. And, what they've experienced, but also some of the sort of conceptual discoveries that they've made. And then we'll open it up to questions of the panel by the panel. So this was motivated by a pre-panel conversation we had that was so incredibly juicy across the different experiences on the ground that we decided to do it that way, and then we'll open it up to questions to you. Does that sound like a plan? Everybody game? Okay, so without further ado, let's start with Dan Emerine of the City of DC.
Thanks, Susan. Can folks hear me? Great. Just a little bit about myself. Susan mentioned I'm the transportation planner for the DC Office of Planning. What that means is I'm the transportation planner for the land use planning agency of the city of Washington, which I think is a really important point to acknowledge and it's already been brought up several times, that what makes the types of shared use mobility that we're all talking about at this convening, what makes that possible is dense, walkable, mixed-use urbanity. And that's, I think, one of the main keys to our success in DC is that we've provided and planned for literally decades upon decades for the types of urban environments that make these types of sharing systems possible. I really love the point that Susan made earlier, that we're bringing all of these different types of services together into something that is larger than the sum of its parts. And we in DC we've actually had some of the longest experience of any major metropolitan city in informal ride sharing, slugging it's called. And part of what makes that possible is just setting up a network of HOV lanes and letting people informally organize and develop the networks that bring people to work more efficiently. We obviously have one of the most effective and widespread and densely developed around transit systems in the United States. We have a commuter shuttles was mentioned earlier. Universities actually are a huge component of our transit and shuttle system. Georgetown University, depending on how you look at it, is one of the largest transit operators in the metropolitan Washington area. So we have this great sort of backbone that we're starting from, this great foundation, and now with car sharing, bike sharing, the new app-enabled ride-sharing services, we just see a really an amazing explosion of growth. I'll just give you some quick facts about what's going on in DC and then talk about some of the larger implications. Again, one of the we have the first, we had one of the first major new bike sharing systems in the United States, Capital Bike Share, or CABI as we affectionately call it. We started in 2010. We have now just recently hit 5 million rides. We have nearly 2,000 bikes operating at over 200 stations. We are frequently topping 10,000 rides a day now. And it's been a transformation in how people get around the city. Car sharing has also taken off like a rocket in DC. We started out with Zipcar and FlexCar originally. The merger took place. Then all of a sudden we have these new operators using our public space, providing more options to people, Car2Go, Hertz. And now the ride sharing services to use the new terminology, the transportation network companies, the Lyfts and the UberX. So we, and just again, a couple of quick facts about car sharing. We've got, it was mentioned before, San Francisco is moving into on-street spaces. We've been doing that for a while now. We've got 84 reserved spaces for various operators. Our point-to-point service, Car2Go, now has roughly 400 cars operating in curbside space, giving people the opportunity to take a car from one point to the next. We have an estimated 60,000 plus membership in the region for all these different services. Some of that's overlapping, obviously. Many people, as mentioned before, people sometimes join multiple services depending on the types of needs they have for a particular trip. So we're doing a lot, actually, within the city to promote car sharing, not just by making public space available, but by encouraging private spaces to be set aside. We actually have a new zoning code that's been underdeveloped for the past 5 years. It's a major overhaul of the city's zoning regulations. It'll be going to public hearings in November. One of the things that we've put in there is requirements for large parking facilities to set aside car share spaces. We also have certainly had to deal with regulatory issues, just in some cases getting out of the way, making sure that car sharing can operate in private developments. We've had business licensing issues, for example, where at one point, our licensing agency was of the opinion that each individual car share space needed a separate business license. We've had to go through a lot of evolution to make sure that we understand how these services are operating and what's the best role for the government to play in making it happen. And that, I think, Susan asked us for sort of 2 or 3 big ideas, and that really is the first one that I want to share with you, that the government has a role both as an enabler, a facilitator, an implementer at times, but we also have a role as a protector and a regulator. And part of our role is to make sure that people are playing by the same sets of rules, that no one's gaining unfair advantage, that we are protecting public interest to make sure that people aren't operating unsafely, that there aren't conflicts between different types of land uses and the services that people are providing. And there's a lot of tension there at times, sometimes even within a single agency, to make sure that we're all operating with the same playbook. So that's one of the things that I think folks in this room need to think about, is understanding that it may be frustrating at times when you approach governments, particularly local governments, and hear different messages coming from what in concept is a single organization operating under single leadership. Understanding that different agencies, different divisions within agencies have been set up and tasked to serve different portions of the public interest. And so it's necessary, I think, to understand who your potential allies are. If you're approaching your transportation department, for example, if you have a choice between approaching the permitting branch and the policy, planning, and sustainability administration, as you do within our district Department of Transportation, go with the guys that have policy, planning, and sustainability in their title, okay? Because that gives you the opportunity to have the much higher level discussion about goals and objectives and where are we all, how are we trying to work together to achieve a common vision? If you start with the permitting folks who may very much want you to start with them, you may end up getting very frustrated. And that's not to say that they're not doing their job. They're doing what they've been tasked with doing, but they need to understand and need to be connected to the broader policy objectives. The second key point that I want to make is that we have had success in DC, particularly with bike sharing, because we've treated it as a regional system. The District of Columbia is one of the sponsors of Capital Bike Share, but from the very beginning, we partnered with Arlington County, our nearest neighbor across the river in Virginia, to set up the system and launch it. We've used our Regional Council of Governments as a contracting vehicle to bring the different jurisdictions together to kind of develop similar language for the contracts with the provider. For example, we've now got it set up so that we've got DC, Arlington, Alexandria, Montgomery County in Maryland is now launching their first stations and bikes. We've got interest from several of the other jurisdictions extending all the way out to Frederick County, one of the more exurban parts of the region. And it'll be really interesting to see, I think, eventually how that kind of interoperability works. I don't expect a lot of people to be commuting from Frederick into downtown DC, but to have these satellite systems in place, I think is going to be a huge benefit to the region. And it's important to cross those jurisdictional lines because people's mobility needs don't follow jurisdictional lines. And the fact that we make it possible to hop on a bike in Arlington County, ride across the Key Bridge, and dock it in Georgetown, I think speaks very highly for our potential for future success. By contrast, I don't think we've had the same level of success with car sharing and making that a regional system. Car2Go, for example, has arrangements to use the public space, the curbside space within the District of Columbia, which means that they're, even though it's a point-to-point system, you still have to end up at a point somewhere within the District of Columbia boundaries. You can drive across the line to do your errand or whatever, but if you don't end up back in the district, you're going to get charged an arm and a leg. And so, and there's obvious reasons for that. We as a local jurisdiction control our street network, and the suburban jurisdictions are responsible for their own. But at some point, we I think, we'll need to start thinking, just as we've started thinking about with, well, we've been thinking this way with the Metro Rail system for years. We're doing streetcar, light rail planning. A lot of that's happening at a very jurisdictional level. And when we start thinking about how people are going to actually want to connect to different origins and destinations around the region, the question of regional interoperability is hugely important for us and something that's going to be a big challenge for us to tackle. The third key point that I want to leave you with is that sometimes success, and we've had huge successes in DC with shared mobility, success often needs failure to start out with. And the point that I'll sort of illustrate it with, and this isn't original to me, our agency director, Harriet Tregoning, has made this point several times. I think I've heard Gabe Klein, who was transportation director in DC before going to Chicago, he's made it several times. Our first experience with bike sharing was a flop. Has anyone ever heard of Smart Bike? Okay. I see a few hands. There's a reason that only a few of you have heard of it. It was 10 stations, 100 bikes, very limited coverage. The bikes were, let's say, not as sturdy as the system we're using now. It was clunky, a little hard to understand how to use it. And I think the biggest failure, frankly, is that we didn't think big enough. Bike sharing, like any kind of shared mobility system, I think, needs scale in order to operate effectively, in order to change people's behavior. So we learned from from what didn't go as well as could have with Smart Bike, and again, I have to say, I'm being harsh on the system, but it was an incredibly invaluable learning experience. It allowed us to sort of to literally kick the tires, to test how would a system like this work. And once we started using it and seeing where the gaps were, what's that gap analysis that we need to do in order to do the version 2.0? Our director likes to say that we need to fail and fail fast. That's not an uncommon thing to hear in the world of tech startups, but that's very risky in government. And governments, I think, are by nature risk averse. So we as governments and all of us here as members of a community that are trying to promote these shared objectives need to give governments the permission sometimes to innovate sometimes through experimentation and failure. It's very easy to tell a story in the Washington Post about government waste of resources and inefficiencies. The newspapers tend not to have a frame about innovating through trial and error. But we need to help tell that story, and we need to give local governments the permission sometimes to take risks.
Thanks, Dan. Really exciting. We're going to move now from thinking big to a smaller community in the south called Mexico City.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. Is it working? Yeah? Okay. The first thing I want to say is to apologize for my English. It's very bad, but it's the only one I have, so I hope I can make myself clear. Anyway, I'm Iván de la Lanza. I'm coming from Mexico City. We having this, that is the bicycle mobility strategy from the environmental department of the Mexico City government since 8 years ago. So believe it or not, that exists. And it's going well, actually. It's going really well. We are in charge of infrastructure and equipment, especially bike paths. And we also do the open street programs every Sunday. We have 30,000 people who goes every Sunday from 8 to 2 o'clock. And we also have the bike share program, Ecobici, which has been a really great success and is a proof that everything is changing, not only in big cities, especially around the world. My father used to live here in San Francisco in the 60s. And I guess he has the chance to experience a new change of seeing the world and thinking about many things. And I think I have the chance to be on Washington, also New York, Ecuador, Colombia, Spain, France. And bike share, it's one way that we can see how the world is changing, especially in the way of transportation. So I want to be really specific on the 3 points, big ideas that Susan told me. So the first one, it's about, I'm going to center in Ecobici because it has been like a real proof of a big change in Mexico City. A couple of few facts there. We are 8.8 million of inhabitants only in metropolitan area. 30% of the Mexico's population is in Mexico City. We are the 5th biggest city in the world. We have 5 million cars. There's a lot of cars. 80% of the total trips in the city made by public transportation and pedestrians. Only 20% of the total trips made by cars. And well, we have really huge problems of jams and traffic jams. So we need to back of the original transportation in the city, which was the bicycle, actually, between the 16 regional areas, actually. So there's Ecobici since 3 years ago. We have over 4,000 bikes. My friend Russell is going to make the point that there's no 4,000, there's only 3,500 bikes on the streets, but we have actually 4,000 bikes. Those pictures are real, are for real. It looks like pretty good and maybe instead for the Mexican government, but those are real users. I really mean it. It's from a friend of mine. He's such a good photographer. So we have now 270 stations, 3,500 bikes, 100,000 users by now, and more than 9 million trips since 3 years ago. So it's pretty amazing that this system has this kind of numbers, especially for a chaotic city like Mexico City. So the first idea that I want to share with you is that the thing about time and space perception. Bike share program in Mexico City has returned not only mobility to people, but also real time and distance perception. In the beginning of the system, we didn't have, we just have a few users, and we make a survey perception, and most of the people said that the main reason not to subscribe to the system was the time per trip. We have only 30 minutes included in the annual membership. And then when we make the survey, we increase the time to 45 minutes. And the people start to become a member in the system. So the time perception was because of the jams, of the traffic jams. The people thought that they actually has this long distance to cover. We know that 50% of the total trips in Mexico City are 6 miles or less. So actually we have really short trips in this huge city. And many people, it's on the car, 20% of the total trip. So many people thought that they travel a lot, but actually they travel 3, 4, or 5 miles over in the total of the day. So when they take the bike, they realize that they were closer to their points, to access distance, and that they are really short than they thought. Seventh, we have this data of Berkeley, of this survey that we recently make with them, that 7 of every 10 trips made now on Ecobici and public transportation were made on car. So that's a really good information that we have. The second point is that many people is rediscovering the city. The thing about cars and traveling by car is that you become a little bit more fear for some places, and you don't have the accessibility, for example, for downtown. Downtown in Mexico City, the ones that ever have been there, it's really chaotic. You can access to downtown because it's really is not accessible for vehicles, especially. So the bicycle can make that to connect 2 main zones. This one is a photo about Reforma, and it's really close to downtown, actually. So the people can go out for lunch and then suddenly decide that they want to lunch in downtown and then go back to Reforma. And it's only 2 miles distance. So they start to discover new places and also to share this information with other users and friends, and to invite to other people to become a member of Ecobici, and to do the travel as fun, as they say. Actually, according to the UC Berkeley survey, made this year, 56% of the users agree or very agreed that they buy more in places or local closer to an Ecobici station. So this is actually an economical, reactive transportation way and accessible. So, and the third point is that I want to express is the common and shared city vision that we have. In the beginning, we have like these huge expectations for vandalism and thieves. Mexico City is really kind of dangerous place sometimes to be, and we thought that everyone is going to thieve the bicycles and vandalisms. Actually, we have one of the lowest rates in the world about vandalisms and thieves. And this is because people love the system and take care of it, and they try to take care of the system. And actually, I was saying with Susan that in social media, Twitter and Facebook, we have reports about people who saying like, oh, I saw my neighborhood that has this bicycle from 3 days ago, and I want to report him, like this social control, because I want to say that you come here for the bicycle and take it over. So I guess the most important thing is that these kind of systems makes like the common vision of the city that we want. And that's really special in Mexico City because everyone is like, nobody cares about the city sometimes, like apathic, especially with transportation. So it makes like a huge vision of what what kind of city that we want, how do we want to move, how do we want to share at that, and also that we can share things and nobody's going to thief or vandalism. So it's really important for me to share this and to say that this is some system that 3 years ago nobody thought that could be real in Mexico City. And now it has these really good numbers, and it opened the doors to make a new, different city. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Iván. I think it's really easy for many of us to get into whatever we're into. You know, it's all business models, or it's all infrastructure, or it's all kind of permitting and legislation. But, you know, it's so nice to be reminded that this is about how we want to live, and about how we think about the way we get around and the way we live in cities. So on that note, we're going to come back home to San Francisco with the Director of Transportation here, Ed Reiskin.
Thank you. Good morning. It's great to see all of you here in San Francisco. Thanks for coming. For all of you that don't come here often or haven't been here before, the weather you see outside, it's like this every day, all year round. So I encourage you to spend a lot of time here, come back, spend a lot of money. But we're very grateful to be able to be the host city for this conference. So I'm the transportation director for the city and county of San Francisco. Previous to that, I was the public works director here. So I've spent a lot of time kind of playing in the public rights of way in this city. Previously worked in a few other cities, including in Washington, D.C. in the local government. Before that, started my career in the private sector, did some nonprofit work, even a little bit of academic work. So I've spanned a lot, but I think my real credibility in speaking here is first that in 1991 I moved to New York City and got rid of my car, and I've been car-free ever since. So a couple decades of car-free existence. I first came out to the Bay Area in 1999 and was, I think, probably one of the first members of City Car Share, our homegrown nonprofit car share company that we have here in the Bay Area. I've since now joined our new bike share, and I guess so I'm a little bit proof of the concept of shared use mobility. I live it. I'm neither young nor single, so also maybe dispelling the myth that some of these things are just for that demographic. I have a family here, and have been raising a family here and in DC and other places, all without the use of a private automobile because of the existence of many of the services that you all provide or are here to talk about today. So I'm living proof of the concept, which I think is kind of more credible than just whatever title I happen to have. But so I wanted to abstract out a little bit, and I think you heard some of this from Scott Wiener, who serves on our Board of Supervisors, which is our local legislative branch here in San Francisco. As somebody said at the start, we're not talking about that the shared economy is coming. The shared economy is absolutely here. It's really swept through, if not engorged, San Francisco in the last few years. The mayor, Mayor Lee, who as Scott Wiener said, would probably love to have been able to be here, is a big adherent of it, as are many members of the Board of Supervisors. In fact, last year, or the year before, I guess it was 2012, they created something called the Shared Economy Working Group, and kind of defined city policy as one of trying to support and embrace the shared economy and the innovation that comes with it, really as a matter of city policy. I think it's happening a lot here. We're in the midst of another tech boom. The growth of the tech sector in the region, but particularly this time, more so in San Francisco, has really been explosive. With that, or because of that, there's a lot of venture capital money that's flowing into the city, into the system, into a lot of these ideas that's really made San Francisco certainly one of the hotbeds of the shared economy in the nation, if not the world. So it's an exciting time. Professor Shaheen walked us through a lot of different definitions of shared use within the transportation sector, but what we're seeing here, and I'm sure many of you in other cities, we're seeing it in many other sectors as well, whether it's sharing your apartment, sharing your workspace. We have biotech incubators that are sharing not just office space, but lab space, very expensive lab equipment that a small startup wouldn't otherwise have access to. You can share your personal time. It's the range of things that fall within the umbrella of shared economy is really quite broad. And that's before we even start talking about the transportation sector. And we've certainly seen a lot of different things coming. City Car Share was one of the leaders here more than a decade ago. I think it was just last year, the year before, they celebrated their 10th anniversary. But there's a lot more that have come in. So that's the context that we're operating in here. I think you heard it from one of our elected officials. You certainly would hear it from the mayor, that this is a hotbed of shared economy, and it's something that I think the city leaders see as good for San Francisco, good for the people of San Francisco. That's the context in which we're operating. That said, it has not been without its challenges. The idea that you can rent out your home or your apartment or a room in your apartment for somebody who's maybe coming into town for a conference such as this gives some, raises questions about hotel tax, about zoning. There are issues that some of this new economy is raising. And I think Dan phrased some of this well, that there are conflicts, and sometimes the government is behind in resolving these conflicts because those of you in the private sector, generally move a lot faster than we do. So that's where we're operating. So when it comes to transportation in San Francisco, though we're not quite as big as Mexico City, we are the second densest city in the country, second only to New York. We've got 800,000 people at night in our little 49 square miles that's surrounded on three sides by water. That swells up to more than 1.2 million in the day. So we have a lot of people in this very small and constrained space. And we therefore don't have the opportunity, I won't say luxury, we don't have the opportunity for everybody to be toddling around town in their own private automobile, nor do we desire that as a city. And Scott Wiener mentioned that we are a transit-first city, and what that references is way back in 1973, 40 years ago, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors formally adopted as city policy a transit-first policy for the city, which doesn't mean that Muni is the only way you can get around, but what it does mean is that the city should prioritize means of transportation, such as public transit, such as bicycling, walking, taxis, ride sharing, should prioritize those as a preferred means of travel for the majority of trips in the city. There'll always be a place for the private automobile in San Francisco. Our topography is one of the challenges we have. Transit doesn't reach everywhere, but the policy, the stated policy of the city that has since been placed into the city charter really is about making these other modes of transportation, including some that weren't even envisioned 40 years ago, making them more attractive for people who are living here so that more people can either live like me without a car or at least rely on the car that they have for a smaller percentage of the trips. So from that transit-first policy, the people of San Francisco took some of the disparate transportation functions and put them together into the agency that I now manage. We are the public transit provider. We are the city transportation department. We are the taxi regulator. We are the transportation planner. And as Tim likes to say, we are the mobility manager, or at least the mobility enabler. So we're really at ground zero of all this. And we've been doing a lot over the years to try to encourage shared use mobility in the city. Like Dan mentioned, in terms of car sharing, putting them on street, we're in the process of going from a pilot of 12 on-street locations to up to 900 in the next 2 years. As Scott Wiener said, the little corner gas stations and empty lots where a lot of the car share providers were finding spaces are going away. So we're making a move to bring them onto the public right-of-way. We operate a number of public municipal garages. We're also making space in those available for car share vehicles, for scooter share vehicles. Our planning code is being changed to encourage or incentivize car share space and private development. And bike share, we're relinquishing a lot of the, or repurposing a lot of the public right-of-way to bike share. Ours just launched a month or so ago. Very exciting, having learned all the lessons from our friends in other parts of the country. That's making for a pretty good launch here. And then we have a whole lot of more emerging types of shared use. And we see all of these as part of the solution, part of connecting where transit or even maybe cycling or other things don't do the trick, things that fill those gaps that do enable you to get around without your own car, at least for a majority of the trips, or at least some of the trips, if not all of them. But again, these have not been without their challenge and controversy as we think about our role between enabler and protector of the public interest. So that gets to kind of the main kind of challenge I have as the city's transportation director, as a public official who I see myself as not just a protector of the public interest, but a steward of it. And really, it's my role to advance the public interest. And our goals, as I think Tim mentioned, not just transportation, but environment, social equity, access, and of course the health of our economy. And so the challenge that I have, that I hope to learn from in the next couple of days, is how do we know what of all of what's happening and happening so fast, how do we know what's good? From my perspective, just because there's a cool app doesn't necessarily mean it's in the public interest. A lot of things that have been happening, thanks to, in part, the research from people like Professor Shaheen, if not exclusively from her research, are well documented, well established. If we can get 10 cars off the road and replaced by one, as a more traditional car share model seems to be able to provide, that's clearly in the public interest, along with all the associated things that have been documented and researched. Other areas of this field don't have that research to support them. So what that leaves us with is we're seeing really smart people come in with really cool PowerPoint presentations, really compelling stories that we don't have the research to back, we don't have the data to back. And so as we're thinking about granting special privilege to access of the public right-of-way, that's what we're struggling with. Should we try it out, or should we wait for the research to get done, or wait and see how it's happening in another city? And one of the challenges with trying things out, I think Dan made reference, you need scale for some of these to work, and I get that. These models require scale. So some of these are hard to try in a very limited way. So that's our struggle. We don't want to be kind of on the one extreme, knee-jerk, this doesn't fit within our permit scheme, this is new and different, therefore we're not interested. I know that's how people may perceive us sometimes in the government. But at the other hand, at the other end of the spectrum, I don't think we're responsible if we're fawning over every new technology and every cool PowerPoint that walks in the door. That's what we're trying to balance here. Data is a big part of that. I think Tim made reference to this. The data will help us analyze what the benefits are, what the travel patterns are. But I think it's really an exciting time. It's great to be in the hotbed of where all this is happening. It's not without its challenges. But I want to thank Professor Shaheen and everybody for pulling this conference together, because I think some of these challenges that we're facing in cities, this is a great forum to discuss them all in.
Thanks so much, Ed. It's fascinating, and I have to say that moving to the Detroit region put a whole new light on the question of how do you know what's good. Because in Detroit, it's like anything is good. Talking about it is good in Motor City, and that is actually really happening. But we're not here to talk about that. Maybe that'll be in the next year's summit. But what we'll do is we'll find out more good things beyond the amazing San Francisco scope in France. Everybody up to taking a trip over to France? Yeah? Okay. Gilles Vesco, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you both, Suzanne, for your invitation. Thank you for having me. It's a long trip away from Lyon, where we are inaugurating today the replication on 4 electrical wheels of Villov. And somebody mentioned Indianapolis, that's the same blue car Bolloré system that we are importing to Lyon. So I'm missing the big photo up because of this Russell made in there. And that he made up that thing this morning, that's the Villov bike. And I'm very proud, and I thank him because it's very touching from you. Thank you, Russell. So I will be a little bit the historian today because the Villov bike entered the museum last week. So I realized that I'm getting old, and by the same way, and I'm old school also because I'm reading my notes, not like you on your smartphone, but it's a good idea. I will do it next time. Sorry for because of the fluency of my English is not so fluent, so I will try to stick to my scheme. And effectively, in 2005, as you mentioned, Lyon pioneered for the first time, I think so, this breakthrough that would, to my judgment, forever change the feasibility of bike sharing, and thus the very possibility of a positive and cumulative impact on urban mobility and city life. Since we must never forget that the final cause of all this is a better sharing of the street, and that means the city itself, and maybe the planet, but that's the same story, but a longer one. So 1 story, 3 ideas. I will very shortly tell the story, which is not yet history. As I told Russell yesterday, the story is what happened, and history is what you tell about it. So I will stick to the story very shortly. We devised this Villov scheme first by doing, of course, some benchmarking in 2004 to 2 trial balloons that were Oslo and Vienna, Austria. Oslo was operated with 2,000 bikes by Clear Channel, and Vienna was operated by Jesse Deco. 700 bikes, both systems not working. In Oslo, not supported by the city, and in Vienna, not enough station. The number of stations were not enough, and the bike was really ugly, and mainly only for tourists or only for the ring. But we went back to Lyon, and since great achievements have no roadmaps, we gave credit for the first time, as I said, to this service bike as an individual public one-way bike sharing system by adding 3 keys of success that has proven to be 3 keys of success. First, we doubled the number of stations in comparison to the number of bikes. Jesse Deco said 4,000 bikes, 200 stations. We said, no, 4,000 bikes, 400 stations. Because we had this intuition that the netting, the density, and the proximity would be the the core system and the reason of success of the one-way system. So we provided easy access to the station and homogeneous access to the station with plastic money, membership card or credit card, and then we've put at least 10 improvement points on the bike itself. For instance, we've put air in the tires where only foam was there. We added brakes, gears, and things like this to adapt the bike to Lyon. And considering that the three others prerequisites were pre-existing. That's to say, a technological solution provided by JC Deco, safe parking on the public space 24/7, then a strong political will. I think, I don't know who told about the risky thing or the flop, the possible flop, because you know it's risky. It's very much politically risky, and moreover, 8.5 years ago, when you are the first to at this level of quantity and quality, when you are the first to launch this kind of system, and what if it doesn't look like it's working out? So it's not optional because it's a matter of getting re-elected, and the mayor should have unscrewed every station right away if nobody had come to the stations. So and the third prerequisite is a strong social expectation and support, and that's this collective or convivial individualism that is the sign of the societal evolution. That also I made that up this morning, but you know it's oxymoron, but it's like this. And Vilov fitted very well to this kind of thing. You want to be free of your trajectory, your time, your pose, but you need to do it in the same time of the others, not in proximity to the others, but among the mainstream of the street. And so some figures with 3,800 bikes on the field, like you made the difference. Out of 4,000, we passed last August 50 million trips, that's to say 100 million kilometers, and the average number of daily trips is 20,000. Last week we climbed up to 34,000, and the record is 45,000. But that's during the public transport strikes. That shows, by the way, that you know there's a modal shift that is functioning. So Vilov turned bike into a true mean of transportation. I think that's the main point. That increased bike traffic by 150%. As Vilov itself is only 1/4 of the bike traffic. So now just a few points I'd like to stress out for the discussion. Certainly Vilov has been the actual proof by actual facts and tests that the efficiency of the one-way system is crucial to the development. I said Susan said it a few minutes ago. Paris was a copy 2 years afterwards, in 2007. And we say Paris has only the choice to be a copy or a draft for Lyon, because, you know, Paris, Velib is a replication of Vilov. Autolib, Bolloré Autolib is a replication of Velib, and now we are re-importing the one-way system. Welcome back. But with 3 more advantages, like renewable energy, the possibility to park out of the charging station, and then we add on the top of that 50 Twizy Renault, this small quadricycle that is very much attractive for the young people. So, as you see, by the way, that the one-way system is also good for the spreading of electromobility now down the street and within our cities, with all the advantages that you know, and also the energetic transition. And secondly, I'd like to talk a little bit about this individual collective thing, or private-public thing, because you see that this platform, this service is right in the middle, and maybe has proven the possibility to turn an individual vehicle, not personal, but individual, into a public vehicle. That's to say, an individual public vehicle by industrial figures, which is crucial to urban mobility policies, since those policies aim at a better individualization of shared modes of transportation, like public transport, and a better sharing of individual modes of transportation, like bikes or cars. Thirdly, the bike-sharing systems brought the evidence that digital information is everything. Is part of the system, is crucial to this new urban and sustainable mobility tool. Digital information is built in the system itself. Vilov has been one of the first ITS, Intelligent Transport System symbols, and proved that sharing information or intelligence was prior to sharing bikes on the public space. So it matches, once again, the public policies that enhance a better sharing of information, sharing the data, as had been said previously, to a better sharing of information for a better sharing of the modes of transportation, for a better sharing of the public space. And like information platforms that have been presented, like mobility or multimodal information platforms, bike sharing systems are that kind of platforms or systems that that can, we have cited Aristotle, but that can, turn the sum of the individual interests into a collective public interest or general interests, which is barely the case in urban mobility, as you know, with traffic congestions and individual cars, and in the city life in general. So, and about the question of knowing what is the general interest, when we see that the modal share of 10% is already there in Lyon and Villeurbanne, almost there, we know exactly that without this modal share, no car could move, no public transport could move on the public space during the morning, during congestion time, and not even within the buses, because those people would be within the buses. So all the city would be stuck. So that's general interest. That's always something to know and to appreciate. Vilov has become a media between the public interest and the individual interest. Some say a social media, but a true media, a true one. That's to say, creating mediation and not immediation. For my concluding points, Vilov also brought a business model. The answer to yes, it's working, but how do we finance it? This is an advertising-based funding model prevalent in European cities mostly. That's to say, not financially fully supported by its users. It has been also the symbol of the sharing economy, but I think Liza Gansky, if she's there, will tell us more about this lately. Endly, the bike sharing system is resolving the contradiction, which is very important, politically very much important, resolving this kind of contradiction between sustainable development requisites and the meeting of social needs. Because too much often we say there's a contradiction between ecology and social needs. Ecology is a problem for the rich people. But me, I cannot eat starting from the middle of the month. I cannot feed my kids and so on and so forth. So I don't give a damn. So thanks to Velov is good for your budget and social inclusion, like car sharing also. To end with this, cycling, thanks to bike sharing, is not anymore a subculture removed from a mainstream defined by cars and drivers. You're not a loser anymore if you're seen on a bike over 25. Biking shows to yourself and to the others what a praiseworthy person you are. That's all I wanted to say, but the rest is for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilles, and I hope you'll allow me to add sexy to that list of what cycling makes you. We've been across geography, across history, and across cultures. And so before we put it out to the experts on the floor, I want to ask the people from the different geographies, histories, and cultures if they have any comments or ideas for each other or questions of each other around what are some of the general themes you've seen across all of you, and what are some of the huge contrasts? And I'm thinking of this in terms of it informing how we move forward into the rest of this conference. What does it mean for what we need to be working on, and what does it mean for what we can be inspired from? And if you don't have any, no pressure, we can ask the questions, but we'll just sit for a minute.
I'll start with one. I think there was a lot of discussion about bike share, and although we're new to it, I think we, as I said, benefited a lot from what we had seen elsewhere. I think it's fairly well established, maybe thanks in part to some false starts early on. But there's so many new things coming into the realm of shared use mobility. One of the themes we heard, even with regard to some of the bike share, was the risk associated with it. I think we now are pretty well understand the benefits and probably well understand the risks. My question, and again, kind of what I'm struggling with, is as new types of shared use mobility come to you and to your cities, how do you evaluate the benefits and the risks?
Who'd like to take that? Iván, you look like you're going to jump on that one.
Well, yeah. As I was saying, and thanks for the Berkeley survey, we have run many surveys and studies, and we have been realizing that no matter about the business model, I mean, for Mexico City, the budget that we end up in the bike share program is really comparing for the total budget is really low. I mean, it's nothing about the benefit that it brings to the people and brings to the whole city, specifically in terms of reduction of contaminations and public health and especially for cultural change. I mean, everyone in Mexico City, they thought that the street belonged to us. So, like, it's a private against the public space. So that's a pretty huge contrast about changing the culture of public space, and especially about the budgets. Another contrast is about clear channel subject, right? So we have like this program with Clear Channel and the experience of Washington. I think it's not about the provider. It's how you managing the provider and what kind of rules do you set with the provider. I mean, Alta Bike Share, I'm such a huge fan of Alta. They have amazing bikes. But we couldn't do this program with Alta just because the physical thing about Mexicans. We are pretty much shorter, and the bike is heavier with Alta, actually. So it's not easy for a man or even for a woman or a young boy to take a huge bike like Alta. They are like bosses of the bikes. So yeah, it's not about the provider. It's not about the business model. I mean, we are trying to improve many things about the business model, but it's It's pretty much more about the success of the program and the acceptance in the public, in the citizens.
Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to mention that it's been brought up several times already, that the importance of data in evaluating and improving upon what's been done already. And I think that's been a challenge for us, and I know in talking to Ed earlier, it is for you all as well. I think we in government understand that many of the folks that we're working with, you're in a competitive environment, you're private sector firms, and things like usage data and membership numbers, these in many ways go to the heart of your competitive advantage at times, and we get that. But it is a struggle for us to be able to effectively evaluate the services that are being offered and understand whether or not, are they having unintended consequences, for example. We were very concerned, some of us in DC, when we launched point-to-point car sharing, because we didn't know whether it might actually be used as a peak period commute mode. And some of the usage data that we've been able to gather suggests that that's not the case. That in fact the usage tends to concentrate more evenings, weekends, and so that's great. But if you contrast my ability to make a general statement like that about car sharing versus the very rich data that we've been able to just put out there about our public bike sharing service, it's just a qualitative difference. And so one of the challenges that I would raise, and for anyone on the panel or for anyone in the room, is how do we protect the proprietary interests, the legitimate proprietary interests that folks have, while still making sure that we can do our public due diligence and provide services that do serve the general interest.
Dan, that to me is the subject of an entire afternoon, if not an entire conference, and it's just so exciting. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to say let's all take that and keep it and have that be in our heads as a question, if you don't mind. And I just wanted to make sure, Gilles, did you have any comments on
yes,
these questions?
I should say the real risk that the mayor took was for Villov, but then for Blue Lie, we call it because it's Blue Car Solutions, and Lyon. LY is for Lyon. So the Blue Lie or Blue Lie is about the same system as in Paris, so we know that it's succeeding in Paris. But financially also, we look at this because also, but we are not the first for the Blue Lie, so we know it's working. So, and then we labelize the system with given number of criteriums, and then we ask for reporting, evaluation, figures, data, and we are just making the follow-up to be responsible, in charge of this before our constituents. But just the financial thing is funny because when we were the first to adopt Villov, Jesse Deco did not know the real cost. He thought it was 1,000 euros per year per bike. It was more than twice that figure. So we made the business of the century because the city is paying nothing, and Jesse Deco is paying a lot of deficit. But it's from the point of view of the group strategy, it's well utilized euros, because then they spread over the whole world. But so we had to go first for Villov, but for Blue Lie we had to go second, because in that case Bolloré did not know the payback, the break-even, the business model at all. So now he knows, and he knows that there's money to make. So he knows, and he wants to go to Lyon because of Villove, because he says, okay, people shared bikes, so they will share cars, and that's what we think also. And once again, the city is paying nothing. In Paris, the city is paying, sorry, it's about the payment, but I will come back to your question. The Paris city is paying 50,000 euros per station. And we are paying for nothing. And from the consumer's point of view, it's the same price, and we have better price in Lyon. So we've got to take risks, but you've got to see the financial part of it. It's part of the risk. And then when you know it's going to succeed, because you know the one-way system is the good system for car sharing. And so you want to adopt, and you know that more on top of that, it will develop electromobility in your city, because the big car constructors, they know that now, that it is the good demultiplication for electromobility. That's the car sharing, electromobile car sharing. But what we don't know yet is the round-trip electromobility car sharing that we are launching on Monday with the Japanese Nido, with Toshiba and Mitsubishi cars. But there are only 30 of them over 6 stations. That, once again, it's renewable energy. That's sun energy from the site, sun moved from the sun to the wheel. But that we don't know if it's going to sit. But that, once again, it's all private. It's limited to a given district of our city. But it's dedicated for the people, for the firms of this district. But we don't know if it's going to succeed. But what we know is that 1 + 1 = 3, and that this new habit, this new behavior, every operator will be stronger if there are 3 instead of being 1. So we hope that this behavior is going to take off, and that we are going to drag off people from their individual cars.
Thank you. Now, I've been told that we're at our time limit, and the questions from the panelists were so juicy that now we'll have to shift the approach. You're going to have to storm the panelists during the break and throughout the next 2 days. And I've been told they won't mind. And I thank you for your presence, and thanks very much to the wonderful, extremely thoughtful panelists.